Welcome to Ecopunk Futures and Art Book Adventure. This is session 1, and you'll see on your screen the materials you're going to need to participate. You'll need a brown paper bag or another large piece of paper that you can fold up. Construction paper isn't great because it breaks if it's folded too many times. You're going to need scissors. You're going to need magazines or any other kind of print media, junk mail, old books, greeting cards, wrapping paper, packaging, bags, really anything that is paper. You're going to need some liquid glue and a tool for applying it. That can be a paintbrush, it could be a chopstick, it could be your finger. You just want to have something that you'll be able to use. You can also use just the tip of the glue bottle, that works too. And you'll need something to write with that will show up on the piece of paper or paper bag unless you want to use a separate sheet of paper. It's going to get covered up. It's just to take down some notes, brainstorming, things like that for us to work with. So hi, my name is Lindsay Sherloom, and I'm transmitting from the year 2120. A lot has changed, let me tell you, but the world is a good place. It's awesome here. You can tell by how shiny and sparkly it is. So what we're going to do today is come up with some visions of what you might think this world looks like. I'm not going to give it away. And it's important that you have your own ideas because that's really what is going to turn this sparkle into reality as we all visualize and then start to walk towards the future that we are making every day with all of our decisions. So this session is going to be part reflection, part visualizing, and also part practically making a book, an art book that you'll be able to use to demonstrate what you think the future could be and share it with other people. So the first thing I'd like to do is ground us in our relationship to the natural world. And I want to start that by asking everybody to close their eyes and breathe. Just simply breathe. As you breathe, feel the air coming in and going out of your body. As we are bringing the air into our body and then releasing it again, we are literally impacting the space around us. We are processing it through our lungs and then releasing it back into the world. And in turn, the plants and trees that are all around us are absorbing it into their systems and then releasing it again. So we are very literally, clearly, tangibly creating the space with our bodies. We are part of space. We are existing here simultaneously to all other living things that are around us. And we are creating it by processing the air around us that we all inhabit. I'd like you to take a minute to also think about other ways that we are connected to place. I'm going to unshare this little materials menagerie. So this is an image that you can kind of explore. And I want you to really think about the ways that you and the world you live in are one and the same with nature. You know, what are the systems that we depend on? How do those systems impact nature? How does nature impact them? We have this idea that humans are separate from nature, but if we think about it deeply, we actually can really see that we are totally intertwined. We are reliant and impacting the world, and it is all one thing. Like we just did, the air that we breathe is creating and co-creating nature with all living things. The way that we recreate, the way that we play, maybe you personally like to run, or maybe you like to bicycle, or maybe you like to play sports or go ski. All of these things depend on the natural world. They depend on our bodies interacting with the world, and the world being in a certain way, in a certain weather condition, in a certain topography. We design our worlds, human worlds, in response to nature, right? We make bridges, we make boats, we harness the wind. We cut down trees to make paths. We cut down trees to make buildings, right? We use nature in everything that we do, and we use the designs of nature in everything that we do as well. We rely on nature for food. We garden and farm. All of our water comes from the natural world, right? Even as we start to think about the different ways that we might be separated, or start to analyze what the things are, it becomes clear that really there is literally nothing that is separate. Animals, plants, we sometimes live separately from them, but they are the only reason that we are able to live. And our stewardship of the world is the only reason that they will be able to live as well. So thinking about that, we are going to start to create an object. Again, using the materials derived from nature. So we're going to start with our paper bag or a large piece of paper. I'm going to cut this paper bag into a flat piece of paper just to show you the way that I do it. I cut down one side, and then I'm going to cut the bottom off. This is 60% recycled material, but even though it's been recycled, I still wonder how many trees have their cells in this Trader Joe's bag. So I'm also going to cut off one of the short sides of it. I'm going to tear these handles off. Now I have this flat piece of paper. So the way that we are going to transform flat pieces of paper into a three-dimensional book is very simple. If you are familiar with the hamburger style of folding, where you take the short edges and fold them together, we will be doing this several times. But before we do the actual folding, I want to show you the scale of what we're working with. So if you have a different size piece of paper than this paper bag, it's okay. This is a regular 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And when it's done, it becomes a tiny little book like this. So if you want to make a tiny little book, you are welcome to. It's going to be challenging to fit a lot of the collage materials that we are going to be collecting and putting together onto a tiny piece, but this can be your book. Maybe this is going to be the size. I'm going to demonstrate the process by using this big piece of paper. So you're going to fold, like I just did, the short sides together, short edges together, hamburger style. And then again, so this is pretty much a square, but what I'm going to do is fold the sides that weren't just connected, these long sides. I'm going to fold those together. Now we again have clear short sides, and I should have just said the short sides together. Always fold the short sides together. So our last fold is going to be, again, the short sides together. So this short edge meets this short edge, and they are connected. So once you've folded hamburger style 3 times, you have 2 parts. This part here that is made up of lots of individual pieces, and this part here that is made up of 2 folded pieces. We're going to take this part and cut it on the top fold to the center. So we have fold here, fold here. We're going to cut along this ridge. So now when I unfold this paper, there is a slot in the center. And just because it's unwieldy, I'm going to show you with this small one instead how it works. That big piece is kind of hard to show. So you have a piece of paper that's been folded together 3 times. You've cut a slot in the center. You open it back up, and now you fold it hot dog style. So the long sides are going to meet each other. Woo! These transmissions are kind of tricky coming from the future. I'm blending in. I may have to adjust my lighting a little bit. Okay, so you fold it hot dog style so that it's a long, long piece. And then you're going to fold that center or push it together so that this slit opens and folds along these sides. And once that happens, now you can fold your book and you have 4 pages that open. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So at this point, what I would do is make a decision. Do you want to look at your book like this, like a regular book, or maybe you want to look at your book like this? Based on that decision, I would mark your book to know which side is up. Which side on each of these pages is going to be up. This will help you when you are actually building your collage. So I have all of my pages marked with a little arrow so that I know which way is up. Now I'm going to open my paper again. And you can see that they're in opposition to each other, right? If I build my collage from the bottom to the top, then half of it's going to be upside down. So you might want to do something where there is like a mirror line here. and you kind of treat both sides as their own section. Looking up, looking up. I built my collage all in one direction. And when it is folded up, that means some pages are right side up and some pages are upside down. I haven't finished yet. I'm going to finish it with you, so bear with me that it's a little bit sloppy at this point. But I just wanted to demonstrate that you may want to have some pages upside down because the world may turn upside down, but you also may want to plan ahead and have everything kind of facing oriented towards the upward position. So now that we have our book base, we're going to do a little bit of visualizing because I want us to think very carefully about what the world could be like before we start playing with all of the images that we have to play with. So again, I'd like you to close your eyes. I'd like you to think about a place that you know well. This may be a place that you love. It's a place that you're familiar with and that you care about, that is important to you in your life somehow. If it's an indoor space, I want you to think about the spaces around it on the outside. If it's an outdoor space, think about what it's composed of. Is it at the beach? Are there buildings nearby? What kind of makes up the area around it? And I want you to think about what you might know about this place in the past. So think about, let's say, 30 or more years ago. That would be the 1990s. What did this place look like back then? Have you seen photographs of it? What did people wear? What was the winter like back then? How did people use it differently than they do now? How did people interact with each other differently 30 years ago compared to today? Now we're going to think about the present. What you know about this place now, in the past few years, during the pandemic or when times were more normal. What are summers like? What is winter like? Spring? Fall? Who is around? What animals are around? What plants are around? What do you like to do here? What's possible to do here? Now it's 2080, 50 years from now, and your place has changed. The weather has changed, and people from all over have had to leave their homes because of drought, because of fire, permanent flooding. The coasts have been ravaged by hurricanes, and lots of people have moved inland to urban and rural places that aren't used to so many people. Even in these safer places, there are still really big storms all the time. They come and go in a minute and cause floods, They cause mold, landslides. And this makes the rivers and lakes dirty. Water ecology changes, and getting clean water is a lot harder. Growing food is harder. It just isn't possible in as many places. And the way that we use land has changed a lot. In the summer, these superstorms are punctuated by strings of super hot days, over 100 degrees. It's sweaty, it's sticky, people are ornery. Lots of people are having a real hard time. And basically the 20th century had done too much damage to society and to the atmosphere to stop climate change and to stop fundamentally changing the way that we have to live. The fossil fuels ran out a while ago. And while the weather and the planet are permanently different, humans are resilient. Innovations have started to emerge just like they have during the coronavirus pandemic. And things are really hard, but we are figuring out new ways of doing things that when the dust settles will give us options to make life actually better. People are prioritizing spending time outdoors. We can visit doctors online. People have the option to work from home. We've figured out how to lower our expenses so we don't have to work so much if we don't want to. There are new normals that we have created to adapt to the changes that we didn't like or didn't want, but we are resilient. Now you're in your place in 2120, 100 years from now. There are still lots of superstorms, and many days in the summer, it's too hot to go outside. But we do live better than we ever have in history. We have learned how to be good to each other, not only other humans, but other living things on this planet, and to live harmoniously with them. And we've created new technologies and knowledge that have changed the way that people live with one another and with the rest of the world. There are, of course, still problems that we haven't tackled and new ones that we didn't imagine. And a lot of things are the same as they were in 2020. Some things like violins and dandelions are the same as they were in 1920 or 1820, but some things had to change. So keeping your eyes closed, I want you to look around this place in the year 2120 as I ask you questions. Trust your imagination and run with it. What season is it right now? Are there people nearby? Are there animals? What kind of structures do people or animals live in? Are there other new buildings? What do they look like? What are the trees or water bodies like? How do you get around? How do you travel? How do we grow food when the weather is so hard? And what do people do for jobs? What is school like? How do we make power? Where does our water come from? Who do we think of as family? Animals? Mushrooms? How do we communicate with them? When you feel ready, open your eyes, and on some part of your paper or on a separate sheet of paper, write down a few words that describe that last world you imagined. Just jot down some words to help you remember. what it was you saw. We're going to create that world in collage, so using paper and glue. And we're going to be using media that already exists. You are in the 21st century. I'm in the 22nd century, so I don't have any of the materials that you have in terms of paper stuff. I don't have the newspaper from the year 2020. I don't have the greeting cards that you have. I don't have the magazines, the media content that you have that is reflecting the world that you see. But the future exists at all times in little blips and burps and little pieces. We don't always know what is going to become the future, what's going to stick around, but it's really all here. It's all here in some kind of way. So that's why I find it really valuable to use media, to use paper media, to use printed things, to start to visualize a new world. Let's see. Yeah, and so we can think about, I want you to look at what you have in front of you. At, maybe you have some greeting cards. Maybe you have a publication. Greeting card. Ooh, it's really getting into the future now. Whew. Okay, sorry about that. Look at what you have in front of you, the paper materials, and think about the symbols. So, right, the objects that represent something else, and how that might relate to what you are visualizing, what you visualized in that last world that we talked about. Kind of think about the colors and textures that resonate with you. And you also may find that your vision of the future changes as you look at what's in front of you. I know that mine started to include a lot more animals as I realized that I had these pictures of animals, and I thought, of course, animals will exist in the future. Maybe we'll exist as like human animal monsters of some kind, beautiful creatures. So allow the materials in front of you to really inspire what you see as possible. I'm going to show you a few examples of collages just to kind of get some thoughts about how to do this. So this is a collage by Meredith Stern. She used paint to create a background and other kind of printed material that she had created to construct the different pieces. Oops. This is a collage by Romer Bearden, who is a very famous collage artist. And you can see that he also uses textures and colors cut out into shapes that help create the scene, create the space. So, you can create a building by just cutting a rectangle. And he also takes pieces of people to combine to make faces. You see there's a big hand in this last one, right? Taking elements of different things and combining them to form a composite image. You might be familiar with Ezra Jack Keats, who uses drawing as well as text, right? So you can tear up pieces of books even and use those. This is Eric Carle, who paints on paper and then cuts that into shapes and objects, right? We see here, he created a sort of yellow-blue painting and then cut that into shapes that resembled waves. And what we're going to start with is the background. So what I'd like you to think about is the place, this place where your world happened. Think about what this setting is like. Are you indoor, outdoor? Are you in a city, country, neighborhood? Are there buildings? What technologies are around that are helping support infrastructure? What kind of shelter is around? And really, what colors make up this world? Bright colors, earth tones, pollution, perhaps. Colors can be really important. So I want to show you some examples of how I constructed background. And this is the sort of final image of a city, which was just made out of lots of rectangles cut and put together, right? So you can just kind of slap them together. I know because I'm in the future that there's sparkles, but that's the future that I made, and your future might be different. So I picked shiny things that were sparkly. Water is another thing that you can create using pictures that are not water, right? So finding blues and purples and maybe greens and browns and cutting them into these kind of wavy like shapes. And then you layer them together, many, many on top of each other. And grass or plants are another very easy thing to make with shapes. So just cutting in zigzags, really, you can create a lot of different shapes and then glue them together. And I'm going to do a quick demonstration of how to do this for you, because I think that might be helpful. So there's lots of different kinds of greens that you can use here. I've got many different kinds of paper. So you can very easily make these kind of zigzaggy shapes by, I'm going to just cut this one off. I have a piece of paper here that I'm going to cut into diagonals down the center. Right, and doing this, I end up with 2 pieces in the end. So now I have 2, they were 1, now they're 2, and I can layer them with all different kinds of other pieces to make a grassy area here, right? Gluing them down one at a time. I'm just kind of arranging them here for the demonstration. You can also take torn up bits and stick them in to have a little bit more texture. And then you also can just simply cut fringe, right? And maybe you don't want it to all be green. Maybe your grass is pink. So I'm going to cut a strip of this off. And then I'm actually going to fold it up a bunch of times, lengthwise. And then not cutting completely through it, I'm going to cut through, cutting fringe through all the layers. Now I have this long sheet that I can incorporate however I'd like to. So maybe my grass is layered in all of these different ways. Pinks and greens. So I'd like to encourage you to maybe go back and look at some of the images that I shared just a minute ago with all of the different kind of styles. There's water, buildings, plant areas, and how to make these textures, and start to compose your background. How do you want your world to look? And yeah, and start piecing them together. So the other thing that I'll just quickly demonstrate, is the simple way of gluing them. So for this grassy section, I'm going to start from the back. So I have my piece here, and I'm going to glue down my first part. Something else that I want to mention about this is that sometimes your paper is going to be a little bit thick, the paper that you are working on, that you're collaging with. Like this is a pretty thick piece of paper. So when I go later to fold my book up, it might be tricky to fold this piece. So you have two choices. You can kind of pre-fold it, just make sure it's nice and creased where you want it to be, or you can actually cut it along that line so that when it comes time to fold it, it's kind of already got a natural hinge. And that maybe obviously especially goes for when you are covering this section. You want to make sure that you you cut the slit so that there's still a slit here so that the book can open this way. All right, so I'm going to just do it in layers, and I'm going to do it by gluing at this point just on the bottom. I like there to be texture, and doing it like this, you kind of give yourself space to add other things in behind it if you so choose. Right, so I can slide a little something back there if I want to, or if later I want to add, if I want to add something like a little creature, I can just tuck it underneath because it's not all glued down yet. So just piece by piece, I'm going to be gluing in layers. And you'll find that you need more than you probably think because you're going to be overlapping it so substantially. You can start to sort of construct your landscape. So at this point, I'm going to come through again and just make sure that I think this paper is thin enough that I can just fold it carefully. Yeah, it'll be fine. Once the glue dries, there will be plenty of mobility for the for this paper because it's not super thick to bend. All right, so I encourage you now to go back and look at some of the images of the water, the buildings, some of those shapes, as well as finding things that are directly from your from your images that you might want to cut out, right? Like here's some celery that I actually just I want there to be celery. So I'm going to just cut out the celery and stick it in. And when you are ready, you can come back and continue on to watch a little bit about making the foreground. So next I want you to think about the foreground, which is where character and story really takes place. Who is in this world? And think about who can live here and who can't based on the technology that's available, the ecosystems that exist. And then get deeper into what they might wear. How do they communicate or socialize? How do they get around? What's school or work? What are these different things that people and animals and plants do in the future? And what are they doing right now? I also encourage you to think about how they interact with each other, how they treat each other, because that's a really big part of having a sustainable future is treating other humans and non-human life with reverence and respect. And so think about how you might create that in the images that you are putting together. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of my collage and then my technique for cutting that I think is useful when you're cutting out specific objects like people or faces, things like that. So this is sort of the foreground now of my image, right? I see that there will be people and animal people living together. And I found this image of this man on a horse, and I thought that he was a good focal point to kind of direct the gaze of the other characters in this scene. And I really wanted to make sure that their faces, so this one doesn't have a face exactly, but like I wanted to construct this face to be thoughtful and respectful. And so I kind of pieced together different elements of it to do that. So I'm going to just quickly show you how I like to cut things. Some people use X-Acto blades on a cutting mat, and that's fine. But I find that the scissors are sort of underrated for this. And there is a technique that I use always when I'm collaging, where I start at the edge and I just slowly close my scissors as I move the piece of paper that I'm cutting out of so that the edge of the scissors aligns with the edge of what I'm trying to cut out. And I'm going to shift this so that it's easier to see what I'm doing here. So right, I'm just carefully kind of keeping my scissors still as I move the card around to continue to engage the cutting edge with the outline of what I'm trying to cut out. And when I get into corners, like this is a corner where the ear and of the fox and the owl come together, I will take both from the outside. So I'll cut into the corner there. And then I might even start from this side so that when I get up to that corner again, I can approach it from the outside again. And coming around, all the while really kind of moving the card, moving the paper to meet the cutting edge of the scissors. And here I am again at this ear, and I'm going to cut right into the corner. So I hope that you have some good visuals that you've been kind of coming together. I hope that you have found material that supports the vision that you see of the future, and that you are finding confidence in assembling it, creating backgrounds and creating the scenes to help support the ways that you think people and animals and everything interact. And now is your chance to just go crazy, go wild, piece all your pieces together, remembering that you still have to fold your paper and you still have to maintain that cut in the middle of your book, right, so that you can fold it. And I will see you back here when it is time, when you're ready and you want to move on to the part of this course, this workshop, where you will start to generate words that respond to your images, respond to other images, and create text to add to your book. All right, thanks for joining me.